Hi, very good afternoon. Jim from Avstar. All of our electricity bills, doesn't matter what country you're in, if they're involved in renewables, wind turbines, solar power, hydroelectric, doesn't matter. All of our electric bills and continue to go up. And, the cost of fuel in the UK alone, let alone anywhere else in the world, is going to put people on the streets this winter. They are certainly not going to be able to do two things: eat and heat their home. Now, King Charles a year ago was talking to the United Nations that there needed to be, no more nonsense about the raising of funds to the tune of £1 trillion, so that, they could implement more electricity generated by renewables, and that would be the figure that would need to be raised. That's me and you paying for that, by the way. And when I see things like Donald Trump visiting the UK for his stately visit, I just think, what a waste of money. 5 aircraft had to be used so that they could transport the Marine One helicopters, 2 of those, and the rest of his motorcade. And then there was Air Force One, the fuel in that. I'm talking, where I'm going with this. I'm talking about CO2. These hypocrites on one hand telling all us lot, to cut back on CO2 and we need to produce clean energy and we're going to raise this amount of money to do so. And then in the very next breath, creating a carbon mountain bigger than Mount Everest. I kid you not, 5 aircraft just for this one visit. They brought all his things he needed, this one man, for his second state visit. It's not his first state visit, but they've given him a second one. And it's not just the carbon footprint of all those aircraft travelling from the United States across the Atlantic to the UK. It's the travelling in between and all the energy that will be involved in that. And then, more annoyingly, it'll be the spending of taxpayers' money to throw one of the most elaborate parties here in the UK on the back of UK taxpayers. It can't continue like this. I'm sure that any one of us, if we've got debts, we're not going out having tomahawk steak meals in the restaurants. We're not going on cruises all around the world, and we're not going, to the Maldives or anywhere else. What we're doing is paying off the debt. And just for instance, the UK is in debt. Most of Europe's in debt. We're suffering with massive inflation, even though these politicians say there's no inflation. Well, we can see it. When we go shopping, we can see it clearly in our food shopping. We can see it when we pay for our energy bills. We can see it now when we pay for rent. And we also, at the same time, see the ability to obtain a job in this modern world being reduced more and more. And nothing is being done to address these real issues. The NHS, I wouldn't mind if they scrapped it now, because the NHS is a waste of time. I have never seen an appalling service as I have the NHS. Terrible management. It's not the staff that are doing the job, it's the management that are running, the NHS. They may as well now just privatise it. We would get better healthcare for it. There's, like I say, there's a lot of issues. They're not being addressed. Anyone that talks out about them, well, you've seen what they've done to this channel. I have never witnessed, such a poor amount of people in terms of view one of my videos as yesterday. I think we reached just about 200. When, on some days a few years ago, we could hit 40,000. So anyone that talks about these controversial political issues gets slammed. And of course, we're in the business of talking about magnetic pole migration. Why shouldn't we be? It's a very interesting topic. For the first time in 780,000 years, that the Earth's, come back round to go through another pole reversal. if we're talking on terms of excursion, 12,000 years, still big numbers. Doesn't matter which one you want to go with. It's large numbers. But, they go after a channel like this, silence it, because the magnetic pole migration of our planet does play a key role in driving the climate, and that's not accepted. They want to keep blaming fossil fuel burning. We're going to get, guarantee you, 100%. In the video that I upload today, this video, there will be a banner from the United Nations telling you their version of the story of why, we need to combat climate change, and in doing so we need to reduce the carbon output that we do as humans through the burning of fossil fuels. It will read something along those lines. You'll see it anyhow under this video. You'll see it in the description or just above. So yeah, amazing, isn't it? Absolute hypocrites. 5 planes to transport 2 helicopters and the rest of the motorcade that Donald Trump will need whilst he's here on the second state visit. Why he's got a second state visit is bewildering me. I don't know why you would need 2 state visits. That's greedy, and that's what these people are. Very, very greedy. How dare he put the burden on the taxpayers, and how dare the king, invite him for a second state visit when, on one hand, King Charles talks about, reducing CO2, and then on the other hand, himself flies around in private jets, helicopters, and allows people like Donald Trump to come and visit us here in the UK, with his entourage of, carbon pumping aircraft on his trips across to and from the Atlantic. I have never seen an American president, by the way, use Air Force One as much as he has. And he's also complaining that they haven't built the brand new one for him. Amazing, isn't it? Eh? You would think that there'd be more importance on trying to get America out of debt. That 27 trillion pounds worth of debt. You'd think that there'd be, more emphasis placed on that to reduce that debt. And I know I'm going to get some people in the comments section who I don't really care about what they say anymore down there. We're going to get the Trump supporters, and it's not that I don't. I'm not for him. I'm not against him. What I'm against is the hypocrisy. That's what I'm against. It's not just Donald Trump. It's Keir Starmer. One of the most hated members of Parliament ever recorded. He's there. He's been told, and there's been plenty of, people say go, and he's just refused to go, despite, people signing petitions to get rid of him, to have another election, to get rid of this lousy, rotten man who cannot run a paper shop, let alone a country. It's just we're seeing it time and time again. The wrong people doing the specific jobs. He is the last person that should be running the UK. He's weak as a leader, and he's always doing his U-turns on his policies. He's already gone back on most of his manifesto that he promised he would do for the British people. We're just getting fleeced. Last week I was in London. Oh my God, coming off the M40, going into London, the 20 mile an hour zones everywhere. Tried to park in central London, impossible. I ended up coming out of London to Chelsea and struggled, Fulham, and struggled to even park there. And then there was the Ringo machine I had to deal with that couldn't understand my English. Can you believe that it took me nearly half hour to log the registration with the parking system? And because I was in a Range Rover, guess what? They added an extra £3 because of the emissions. Yeah. And there's Donald Trump with his Global Master, whatever aircraft they're called. They're huge things. Globe Masters, are they? and pumping CO2 at a colossal rate. I just want to know, what? Just give me a rough idea of what you think it cost in monetary terms alone to bring 5 of those aircraft over, then all the security, then the Air Force One, and then what it's going to cost the British taxpayers in making sure that he's got a secure and safe visit while he's here. What do you think the cost of that would be? I bet you we are running in close to 100 million, maybe more. For what? Just so somebody can have the pompous ceremony and a party on the taxpayer. It is wrong, it's immoral, and we shouldn't be allowing this, because if they are telling us that CO2 is driving the climate and damaging the world, and then at the same time flying in 2 helicopters, another 5 massive aircraft all the way across the Atlantic and back, then something's wrong. Something's gone very wrong, badly wrong. And if the King, of the UK is making these invitations and then at the same time telling us that we've got to reduce CO2, then that's wrong. Because, we're paying for it. Our energy bills are on the increase, and when you increase energy costs, you know what that does? It increases everything along the line, across all the ranges. If it costs more for the farmer to put the seeds in the ground and get that crop back out, that price is being transferred to you. And if something that you probably don't directly associate with runaway taxes, let's say the fuel for the tractor costs an extra £100 for the month, then the cost of the produce is going to go up by that £100, because the farmer can't keep absorbing these costs. So the cost of the products are going to go up by £100. But when it actually gets into the shop and it's sold, that £100 increase is now what you're being taxed on. Do you understand that? Yeah? If the £100 weren't there, your tax on the food, or the VAT on the food, wouldn't be as much. But it is. So we've got runaway prices, runaway taxes, and then we've got politicians that are literally laughing in our faces whilst they lay down an enormous carbon footprint in their activities and blame us, the general public, for it. And then when you say anything about it, they silence you, just like they're doing now, right now. And they should be ashamed of it, because what they've done to YouTube is said, look, do you want a license? Do you want to have to apply for a license to broadcast YouTube in the UK? Because if you don't do something about these people that are talking about these controversial matters, then that is exactly what's going to happen. And you will have to conform to the regulations of that license, which could mean anything, basically. They could just tell these social media networks exactly how to run their business, and they would have to do that. They pretty much almost are anyhow. But what we're running into here, and we're definitely seeing it with, the Trump administration, is a socialist society. When the governments start taking financial interests in companies, start taking dividends and shares in those countries, in those companies. We are therefore now moving from this system that we've got, which is supposed to be the capital system, into a fascist system. And we're already seeing this. I've always said this. If you want to get a heads up as to what's coming, and I'll tell you what's coming, you can, don't take my financial advice, I'm not giving on. I'm just giving you an idea of what's coming. In the next 12 months, there's going to be a housing collapse globally. I know this because I've already seen it happening in Beijing, China, Hong Kong. Property values already halved in value. And the reason for this is because the loss of jobs, the modifications to tariffs, as a result of Trump, companies literally leaving shop, from China, going to places like Vietnam, Mexico, India, and then, you know, it's just causing pandemonium over there in China. And I know a lot of people don't care about, you know, China. You know, it's a communist country. Why should people care? Because they're human beings, that's why. You know, we should all be concerned, because if it can happen in any country like China, it can certainly happen in our countries as well. And you know, what I'm saying is, you know, we see this corruption everywhere in all our governments. We know they're getting away with blue murder, and they're using loopholes to exploit tax havens and things like that. And we know that these massive companies are being funded and propped up by the taxpayers around the world. It's just totally wrong. And I think Elon Musk is right on one aspect, that if we do not do something about it ASAP right now, then we're going to be in bigger trouble further down the road. You know, that's why I say, you know, it is imperative that you support this channel, because we're the rare people now. We're like unicorns on YouTube, and you know, our special treatment from YouTube isn't gone unnoticed. I'm sure that you realise that there's something dramatically wrong with the views, with the fact that you've been unsubscribed, you haven't been notified, etc., etc. This is nothing short of silencing the opposition and anyone that speaks out about the political turmoil that our countries are in. And you know, I'm all for humanity. So when I talk, you know, I like to talk on the broad spectrum of all countries, not just one, because we're all human beings. You know, I if I could, I would help you know, those people that are in, you know, dire situations here in the UK, over there in America, and Canada, anywhere in the world, China, you name it, because I guess I'm a humanitarian. You know, I have passion for, you know, seeing people do well, and compassion for those that are suffering. And all I can see right now is more suffering and nothing getting any better. And I think you can associate with me on this, guys, because if you just type in whatever country you live in and then the cost of living crisis, you'll see it's on your front door as well as mine. So with that, there's a link down there if you want to help support us. If you are interested in the positioning of the magnetic North Pole, join us on Patreon, and I'll say what I usually do. You take care of your loved ones, as always. Bye for now.